Sword and Board. I'm Luke.
And I'm Lars.
This is two guys talking about every fantasy movie ever made. It has been a while, Lars. How are you doing?
I am a little under the weather today. Hopefully can knock out whatever this is with some rest and some Earl Grey tea. I've got my Captain Picard Star Trek mug. I've got my Earl Grey. I've gotten to the point where I say to my kettle, tea, hot, Earl Grey. That's where I'm at right now. That's how I'm doing.
Nice.
Lucas, how are you doing?
I am okay. Still living through the shattered hellscape of 2020.
There's been some brighter spots towards the end.
Yes, but at the same time, it's still extremely up in the air. But I am okay. We decided this time around to go back to just talking about dragons.
Go back to our roots. We had kind of been bouncing around the quasi-fantasy, kind of fantasy adjacent. Let's make no bones about it. This is going to be a dragon episode. Dun dun dun.
So what are we talking about first?
Let's talk about the one that was the most forgettable.
Yep.
And this is not the worst one that we watched of the three, in my opinion.
No, absolutely not.
This is a solid number 2. Whereas the worst one we watched was a solid number 2. Heyo. But what we watched, it's on Amazon Prime, it's Dawn of the Dragon Slayer.
This was profoundly forgettable. It was fine, Like it wasn't.
It was a solid little movie.
A to B plot of it, because that was something I had a problem with. Like I was watching it and I'm like, okay, all right, it's. As far as I can tell, there is a farm boy, a dragon attacks his farm. His dad sends him to go live with a rich person right before he dies. Falls in love with the rich person's magic daughter. He has to fight the evil prince, and then the dragon comes back.
And he has to save the day and defeat the dragon. That's basically it. I don't know, there were some things that elevated it for me. It was real locations and sets. It wasn't just them with a green screen behind them. Like, they were actually in castles and, like, out in the fields and in caves and stuff. Like, when they're on the cliffs, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
At the end. It is a very simple movie, but simple's not bad if it's told well, and I thought this one was told pretty well. It was better than when you look at, like, it's one of those things when you're staring at the abyss of what's on streaming services. There's just so much content out there, right?
Right.
And often you have to base it on that little thumbnail
that changes depending on what you're viewing.
Right. And this one looked terrible. And it's called Dawn of the Dragon Slayer. And it's like, it's couched next to like these other horrible, not even Asylum level movies.
Sci-Fi Channel originals. Yeah.
Right. And then, so the fact that it was watchable and it had a story that you could follow and the good guy wins in the end and he gets the girl. Okay, that's fine. Yep. It tried a lot harder. That was the thing. Like, this actually, like, they were acting in it. I thought.
Yeah, no, there was
rather convincingly.
Yeah, no, it was pretty. Like I was pleasantly impressed, and it's one of the things we've talked about multiple times on this is that one of the worst things with perfectly adequate good movies, I don't have a lot to say about. Like, this was good. The one thing I did like about it was that the dragon didn't look like every other CGI dragon we've seen. It had that weird, almost like catfish head.
It had a weird head, and like all the other movies that we watched today, the flying around dragon parts were better than the up-close attack parts. I'll even say that for the best movie that we watched, the flying around dragon was better when the dragon was on the ground. It just looked better. So for me, this one, it fell in that same trap where flying around looked pretty good. When you got a little closer to it, that kind of fell apart. Don't you swing a broadsword with 2 hands?
I mean, I suppose you
Or is that a samurai sword?
Well, it depends on how you're fighting, I guess. There's actually, like, a lot of...
Oh, I thought you were supposed to swing it with 2 hands. Oh, I don't know.
Well,
I guess with... Yeah,
like,
I don't know. I just thought you were supposed to swing with 2 hands.
With longer swords, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that there was a portion midway up the blade that wasn't sharp, so you could use it as a stabbing spear. And so you would, depending on how you're fighting, you would use it in a variety of different ways, so it wouldn't probably be unheard of to use it as a one-handed weapon. At the same time, though, you're probably going to want the power of two hands.
Gotcha. This is gonna be the quickest review of a movie. I'd recommend it. It's fine. Go see it. If you're scrolling through and looking for a dragon movie, you're gonna find a lot better, and you're gonna find a whole lot worse.
Like ERAGON.
There's the worst.
So what was funny is when you suggested that, I had actually just picked up the book, and the book's not bad. Like it's YA literature. It's very the book series has been, I've heard people talk about it as it's Star Wars of the Rings, and that's very apparent in the book series. The movie, you want to talk about it, a boring movie, the first hour and a half, nothing happens. A to B plot, a young Luke Skywalker finds a dragon egg, and is being hunted by the Emperor, and they have adventures with a much younger Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, I mean, this was Star Wars, which, and to be fair, Star Wars was Hidden Fortress and a bunch of other things, right? So, like, the hero's journey is not emblematic of Star Wars. George Lucas didn't invent that story arc. However, this was Star Wars. Yeah. This was Star Wars. This was it followed that story arc in the way that Star Wars followed that story arc.
Like the books, they're not the most elegantly written things in the world, but they're fine. Like, I'm enjoying them. But it's so boring and no one cares. And what's funny is, so John Malkovich plays Galbatorix, the Emperor. You know,
for like two scenes.
Galbatorix. And he actually doesn't show up in the first book at all. Or the second. He's just there. And they added him in to be stuff. And I like Gary Oldman's fine, but that's not how he reads in the books. And
that wasn't Gary Oldman.
I'm sorry, not Gary Oldman.
Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons, thank you. That's the.
Okay. Jeremy Irons. Okay, Alec Guinness was a classically trained actor. Mm-hmm. He was in Bridge on the River Kwai. He was in Lawrence of Arabia.
He's in Cromwell.
He was in Cromwell. He was The Spy Who Came from the Cold. I mean, he is a classically trained actor. He was nominated for an Oscar for Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And I put Malkovich and Jeremy Irons up on that par of classically trained actors. Jeremy Irons is an Academy Award-winning thespian. Malkovich has been nominated. Like they are actors.
Yeah.
Like they are good actors. Why doesn't this work for them? Is it the material? I'd say it's the material.
Yeah. Because it's definitely the material. But even still, like, it's got to be the material, because this is part of that wave of we need to get every YA property possible to cash in on Harry Potter. And that was a huge wave, and this seemed perfectly suited to that, because the prequel trilogy has wrapped up. Lord of the Rings has wrapped up, and Harry Potter is still midway. So it's that perfect sweet spot. And if you had something there that could have been more, then it would have worked. But you were talking about how in Dawn of the Dragon Slayer, it's all got in actual locations. There's not green screens. Nothing in ERAGON felt real. Like, they were all sets, but they all felt fake, and not like fake and I'm watching a movie, fake in this doesn't look right.
And we've seen examples of things looking like sets, and it works. Like Prince Valiant.
Yes.
The castle, that's a set, but you're still, it works for it, because it fits with the time period, it fits with the kind of movie it is. It's a cool looking set, there's a lot of people in it, so I know it's a set, but I'm not taken out of it. It doesn't take me out of the movie. The sets in this thing took me out of the movie the whole time. I felt like there was so much that they just skip over, and this is very much a movie based on a book. In a book, you have the time and the ability to world build, right? Like, you can kind of go into this. So in a movie, you kind of have to do it visually, and you have to do it quickly.
Yep.
And some things really do it well. Star Wars obviously built the world very well with just visuals. Mm-hmm. There was not a huge expedition. The only exposition dump that you have in Star Wars is that you have a 3-paragraph crawl.
Yep. And then you have...
Here's the story.
And Obi-Wan explaining why the Empire's bad. But even that is... and the lens of his sadness.
Yeah. Yep. So, and then, like, even things like Willow. Mm-hmm. There's a quick little, here's what's going on. There's a bad person. They're trying to kill all the babies. Yeah. Here, bam, you got it. Mm-hmm. Highlander, bam, got it. Quick, and so it doesn't do that. So instead, the central relationship with Aragon and his what's the dragon's name?
Saphira.
Yeah, whatever.
So so that's
that's not developed, in my opinion.
Well, no, but the thing, like in the book, you know how she hatches and she flies up into space and she's immediately fully grown.
Yeah,
that's a 7-month sequence in the book where she actually grows and they talk, and Aragon finds the name Saphira in another book and thinks it's beautiful, and he names her that. And it turns out that was Brahm's dragon. And so it's a lot more poignant that he named her that, because it's more of a connection. It's not just, oh, my name's Saphira, I have a 5-minute-old dragon that's infinitely powerful. Kind of.
Right. Kind of.
Yeah, like it was. I think one of the worst parts about it was like the book's not bad. Like it's not stellar writing. It's not stellar literature, but it's an enjoyable read for the most part. And I just don't. It was funny. Aragon's uncle, his adopted father, Uncle Owen. That's Torquil from Krull.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think here's the thing. Like, I really didn't know who the bad guys were, like what they were doing, and I wrote down that repetition in these kinds of movies, in fantasy movies and in sci-fi movies, especially if it's you're trying to build a series, and this is clearly what they were trying to do.
Yes,
repetition. That is what's important. So in Star Wars, we hear Empire, 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 Rebels, Rebels, Rebels. It's simple. We know who is who. Harry Potter, he who must not be named. He who's, we get it. He's the bad guy. Lord of the Rings, Sauron, the ring, we get it. So that helps build the importance of not only whose side is who, but the stakes. I don't get what John Malkovich's ultimate goal is.
Yeah, it's
other than just being bad.
Right. And
so
they he is an evil. He's a Jedi who turned to the dark side. He killed the rest of the Jedi. Like that's sort of the thing. And he's kind of immortal because he's bonded to a dragon. Okay, like he has no. I want to know what his paycheck was.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. Like,
oh, well, I suffer without my stone. Do not prolong my suffering.
Yeah.
That's like one of the first lines he says, and I was like, Jesus, this is going to be a long one if it's going to be dialogue like this.
So I will defend to my death the Super Mario Brothers movie, but Dennis Hopper in it, his kids asked him why he took the movie, and he said, and he said, well, you guys need to choose. And his children said, well, we didn't need them that badly.
Perfect.
So what was? Yeah, I don't get it. Why did he take the role of? Yeah, I was just disappointed the whole time. Like, I was bored. I was actively bored the entire time. And
which you shouldn't be in a movie about a kid that finds a dragon and he's bonded to the dragon and gets to fly around on a dragon. Yeah. That sounds like it should be awesome.
Right. And it's like that scene when he first goes flying with her. It was just, okay, I mean, that should have been like a huge emotional crest, and I'm just like, all right, you haven't done anything interesting with this.
Right. Yeah. And this all the stuff that we're talking about is very clearly why it's the inheritance cycle, right?
Yeah.
Like there's like 4 books. Why they didn't adapt the other ones.
Yeah, like it did not do well, and it did not.
They just didn't do well with it either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, blah. The Shining Spot.
Yes.
Which is not surprising because Matthew McConaughey's in it, and I dig me some Matthew McConaughey.
Dig me some Christian Bale.
From way back, Dazed and Confused, all the way through his bumbling in the rom-com universe to more dramatic, serious fare. Just seems like a really cool guy. Christian Bale seems like kind of a dick, but is also a great actor. Reign of Fire. When was this made?
I want to say it was 2004, I think.
2002.
2002. Wow.
It still looks good.
Yeah, it looks really good. So, I have a question. We watched a movie that for a while sat at the bottom, Dwarves of Dragon Mountain. This is a movie that has no dwarves in it. This is somehow a more dwarven movie than Dwarves of Dragon Mountain.
Because they're all, yeah.
They live underground, they use axes, they all have righteous beards, and the plot is...
They're all sooty,
they're all sooty,
dirty.
The plot is kicked off by man's hubris digging too deep and finding something buried.
Yeah, I mean, the movie is London, present day, and...
The Borg
Queen, Alice Krieg, is doing some sort of, like, big dig project or whatever.
Yeah.
And awakens dragons that have been dormant. and the dragons come out, and it skips ahead like 15, 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And
It's 2020.
2020 now. So it was present day in 2002. Now it's 2020.
No, I mean, it jumps to 2020.
I mean, does it actually jump to 2020?
It actually jumps to 2020.
Honestly, I would have taken the dragon world.
Yeah.
But so it jumps to 2020, looking remarkably like what it does today, minus the dragons.
Yeah,
but
World on Fire.
World on Fire. But dragons have basically decimated the world. They have burned everything. They're eating. Humanity is on its last legs. We tried to kill them. I think it's implied that we nuked stuff, and that made like the sky black and all that kind of stuff. And it follows a band of people that are trying just to survive, basically. And that's led by Christian Bale. And then a ragtag group of Americans come in to. They believe they've got the way to kill off the dragons. And hilarity ensues.
Yeah.
and they have to go kill the dragons. Matthew McConaughey is bald. He sounds like he has breathed smoke for about 90 years.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
It does a really good job of building that world, because there's the scene that has stuck out in my head for years is they've got all these kids they're doing like story time. And what are they acting out? Empire
Star
Strikes
Wars.
Back.
And with Gerard Butler. Gerard Butler's in it. I love that. I love that too. Well, and that's, I've always had a problem with movies in the future, and like, they all listen to classical music. They all, they all enact Hamlet and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Why didn't on the Enterprise anybody ever do like The Odd Couple, like a Neil Simon play, or like, it doesn't even have to be trashy. Like, why don't you do a reading of that? But it was really funny that it's these guys, and to entertain the children, they're performing Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which is great. The scene that stuck out for me upon this rewatch, and it was the one that I remembered when we just said, hey, let's go watch this movie. This one scene stuck out for me, and it was the best one still for me this time. So, what are they called? They're archangels. Mm-hmm. And the archangels are basically, they are these special troopers that will leap out of helicopters and act as bait for the dragons, and they try to catch dragons. Mm-hmm. I loved that scene. That was so awesome. They leap out of a plane. They're like falling. There's like they can see the dragons cutting through the sky. They're trying to catch them. This is what these Americans do. I don't know. That to me was so cool. Yep. What did you think?
It seemed in a lesser movie I would have gone, oh come on, but in this ridiculous world, it works so well. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole movie, is that it makes no bones about that it is a little bit silly, but it also turns into it, and it sort of accepts that it's insane. Mm-hmm. And something that we brought up on, there's something Victoria brought up with me, is that so they kill the dragon, they have a big party, and Matthew McConaughey walks in and he chastises them for having that party, because why are you doing that? And if you look at him, he's crying. He's actually crying because he lost 3 people. Mm-hmm. And like, all right, we killed 1 dragon, and for 3 of them, he has that thing about how we can, at those odds, we can do that in 240 years.
Right.
And he's so, it's like this was his one purpose, and he is so good at that one purpose. Mm-hmm. And there's this really great framing. Another thing she pointed out, after the bull dragon attacks the that is one thing that I was a little bit about. I mean, that castle is in the north, but it takes them a while. It seems like they just hop on the road and head down to London in like an hour or 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that England is relatively small, and coming from the States, that it can take a while to get places. Who knows? But they have that argument, and the framing of, like, they talk about how he's like, let's not lose our heads, like they're an explosion, like there's an explosive kind of thing. And the framing of it, Christian Bale loads his gun, which is chambered for, I'm not making this up, 5.77 Tyrannosaur. That's the bullet that he uses. It is meant for taking down elephants and charging animals in Africa. It's a giant round called 5.77 Tyrannosaur, which is just awesome. Really? Yes. It's just very awesome. Cool. So he aims it at, like the framing of it, that gun is aimed at his head. The way it's the shot, it's just a really cool shot, and they're talking about exploding, like explosive tempers and not losing their heads. It's surprisingly well shot, and it looks really good.
It does. It has his name's Rob Bowman. He directed a lot of X-Files episodes, and he directed the X-Files movie. So there's some scenes where it reminded me of X-Files. Mm-hmm. Like, just the look of it. It's very dark, which it makes sense because there's no electricity and everything's burnt out and everything's ash, which leads me to so of course Christian Bale, they survive and he ends up killing. They figure out that if you kill the big dragon, all the other dragons will go away.
Yes.
So they do that, and it's like at the end of it, we haven't seen a dragon in 6 months or whatever. How do you rebuild after that? They always talk about, we will rebuild, we'll get back. How? How do you do that?
Well, with all the dragons dying and starving eventually, then they finally, slowly?
Very slowly, yes.
There's this interesting book series called, I think it's called 1642. And the framing device of it is that this town in West Virginia, Grantville, just gets transported to 1642 Germany. The entire town just gets plopped in there. And it throws off everything because the relative tech level of a town from 2000 dropped 400 years in the past. And it becomes the center of learning because of their high school, because of the wealth of information at a high school library. And it's just an interesting thing. And I bring it up because there's still books, the knowledge is still there, they just have to find it. I mean, it took a while to rebuild after the fall of the Roman Empire, kind of, but there were still there were still places around the world. We just have a Eurocentric view of things. So, probably the most memorable thing of this entire movie, because it's the most ridiculous, because it's probably the coolest thing in the world. Matthew McConaughey climbs up to the top of the smokestack at the end of the movie, and he sees the bull dragon, and he sprints and he jumps.
Yep.
So someone did the math on that, and he breaks every long jump record that has ever existed by doing that jump by 10 feet.
Perfect.
And he probably intended to he wasn't going to die. He was just going to go straight through him with the axe and come out on the other side. That's what he assumed. But yeah, this held up so well. I was expecting it to be kind of I was a little bit dreading this one because I remember enjoying it so much and watching it, and this is just as good as I thought it was. Do you agree with that? That it's still kind of, there's a little bit of cheese to it, but I was blown away with how much it still held up.
Yeah, no, me too. I think this was one of those, when we started talking about this podcast, this was one that I was like, ooh, that'll have to be on the list. We have to watch Ring of Fire. I remember seeing it, I think we saw it in the theater, and then we probably watched it a couple other times, but I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen it. It's not one that that
wasn't Mortal Kombat.
Is on TV a bunch or whatever. No, but it was a really solid movie. It was good action. Okay, so here's a difference between this one and the one we just talked about. It took time to develop the characters. It took time for you to care about them. And again, in a fantasy movie, if you care about the people in fantastical, crazy, weird, nonsensical, kind of roll your eyes, ridiculous situations, you go with it because you want them to be okay in the end. And so then when Gerard Butler makes his sacrifice and he slams the door and saves everybody, you care about that.
Yeah.
And you care about Christian Bale losing his best friend. You want them to succeed. There's actual stakes because you care about the characters and you understand what's going on. And it was simple. It was we have to kill this thing, so this thing will go away. But it's very, very simple. I don't know. I dug it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those. The elevator pitch for this, Dragons in Modern Times. This is an asylum premise done right. This is with money behind it, and we don't get many movies like that. We don't get people who actually try with an asylum premise.
And you said that's your goal. If you have money,
yeah, I would
do an asylum premise. Do it well.
Yeah, the only time I can think of two off the top of my head that did it well, and it's this and Pacific Rim.
Yes.
Correct. I would love to know other ones. I would love to see if anyone out there can think of another asylum style movie that actually was done well in a big picture. Please drop us a line about that.
Yeah, what's a good asylum premise that was done entertainingly and done well? Yeah, I have to think about that one. Where do these movies rank, Lucas?
So, ERAGON was not as viscerally uncomfortable as Lord of the Elves. That's where I'm putting it. Because Dwarves of Dragon Mountain, at least it didn't make me upset about a bad adaptation.
Right. That one made me feel bad that we were watching it.
Yep. That's the only thing for me, honestly, at this point, from putting it all the way at the bottom. Because,
seriously?
I think I would have preferred to watch Dwarves of Dragon Mountain because there wasn't a least it wasn't a movie that I had seen before, and I have seen ERAGON. It's Star Wars, it's Lord of the Rings, and I've read that, and there's so much potential for better there. Where would you say?
I mean, I'm gonna say it's bad. I mean, I didn't think it was Deathstalker bad, but
I don't know. Like,
to your point, I mean, it was nonsense, and at least I could see it at least above. It's above the Steven Seagal movie.
Yeah,
it's not above the Hobbit movie.
Yeah,
it's not above Five Arby's. Against the Dark is garbage.
Yep.
This was garbage with a budget, so okay. It had a budget.
Yeah, okay, I can. Does
that make sense?
Yes, it does. I can accept that.
Okay, okay. Dawn of the Dragon Slayer,
solidly in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
I would, looking at it, I would say probably between, it's a little bit, it's not quite as good as The One Warrior, but it was slightly better than Season of the Witch.
I'm good with that.
Yep. And scrolling towards the top.
Yeah, I wouldn't say all the way up the top, but it's up there.
As I said before, this is an extremely dwarven movie. This is also a better Dragon Slayer movie than Dragon Slayer.
Yeah, but I like Solomon Kane better.
Me too.
Okay.
I think I agree with that. All right, cool. So, Lars, where can we be found on the internet?
We can be found on Twitter at Sword and Board Cast. We can be found on Instagram. We can be found in our homes. Still. This is as great of news as it was that we have a vaccine out there now. Do the right thing. Don't go traveling for the holidays. Wear a mask. Be safe, please. Where else can they find? Oh, they can find us on all the podcasting networks. Such as
Stitcher and Podbean and Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Pandora and Smoke Signals and other various things. Our theme music, Goblin Road Trip, was produced by Ryan Boyd. You can find them at Ryandroid on Twitter. Our artwork is done by Wes Forbes. Stay safe. Wear a mask. Tip your delivery drivers.
Wear a mask. Tip your delivery drivers. And we will see you in 2021.